You don't lead by fear, you lead by fire, by igniting something in others that even they didn't know existed. The greatest leaders don't bark orders, they breathe belief, they don't create followers, they forge warriors. And once you master this, you won't just lead. People will choose to be led. That was my secret. Not tactics, not numbers, influence. Learn how to win minds, own hearts, and make anyone your soldier. Subscribe to our channel if you're ready to master your mind and tell us, where are you watching from? You stand before your troops, your subordinates, your team, and you think the battle begins with your words? None. You are already late. The true war was won or lost long before this moment, in the chambers of their minds, in the depths of their beliefs. That is where victory is seized. Let me tell you what I learned on the fields of Austerlitz, in the frozen wastes of Russia, in every campaign where I turned mere men into unstoppable forces. Leadership is not about shouting commands. It is about mastering the art of mental warfare. Think. When did Alexander the Great truly conquer his empire? When his soldiers first believed they were invincible. When did Caesar truly cross the Rubicon? The moment his men believed they were. Making history, not merely disobeying orders. I will tell you a truth that most leaders never grasp. The human mind is a fortress. You cannot break it. You cannot storm it. You must make it open its gates to you willingly. This is the first principle of true leadership. The mind must be won before the body will follow. You see, every person carries two armies within them. The first is their potential, vast, powerful, often untapped. The second is their doubts, legion upon legion of fears, hesitations, and limiting beliefs. Your job as a leader? Arm the first army, starve the second. I did not conquer Europe with superior numbers. I conquered it with superior conviction. My soldiers believed in victory so completely that defeat became impossible in their minds. This is not magic. This is not chance. This is the scientific application of psychological warfare turned inward to strengthen, not destroy. Here is how you begin. First, understand that every mind is a battlefield. Map it like territory. Where are the strongholds of doubt? Where are the reserves of untapped courage? Second, realize that every word you speak, every action you take, is either planting a flag of victory in their minds or ceding ground to their fears. When I spoke to my soldiers, I never saw men standing before me. I saw fortresses of potential, waiting to be unlocked. Each word was chosen not just for its meaning, but for its power to penetrate those walls, to kindle the fires of belief within. You want to lead? Start with this. Before you try to command anyone's actions, learn to command their beliefs about what's possible. Before you ask for their strength, give them unshakable conviction. Before you point them toward the enemy, help them conquer the doubts within. Remember this. The greatest battle plan ever conceived is worthless if the minds executing it are filled with doubt. But give me an army of ordinary men who believe they are destined for greatness, and I will show you an unconquerable force. This is where your journey as a leader begins, not with tactics, not with strategy, but with the mastery of mental warfare. Learn to win minds, and bodies will follow. Learn to plant conviction, and action will grow naturally. Learn to forge belief, and you will never need to demand obedience. For when you master this, when you truly understand how to win the battle, in their minds first, you will discover what I learned through years of conquest. True power isn't in making people follow orders. It's in making them believe so deeply that orders become unnecessary. Now, are you ready to learn the art of mental warfare, to master the true battlefield where leadership is won and lost? Then listen closely, for what I am about to teach you transformed peasants into empire builders, and it can transform anyone into a force of nature. Listen closely, for I am about to share with you the difference between those who command and those who truly lead. It is not in the volume of their voice, but in the depth of their conviction. I have seen generals with the finest uniforms, the loudest voices, the most impressive titles, reduced to nothing before troops who sensed their uncertainty. And I have seen lieutenants, barely more than boys, lead charges that changed the course of history, all because their conviction burned brighter than their fear. Let me tell you about the Battle of Arcole. I was young then, still proving myself. We faced superior numbers, entrenched positions, every tactical disadvantage you can imagine. But I knew something that would make all these factors meaningless. Conviction is contagious. When I grabbed that flag and charged forward on that bridge, I wasn't trying to be heroic. I was demonstrating an unshakable belief that victory was not just possible, but inevitable. The soldiers who followed me didn't follow orders. They followed conviction. This is what most so-called leaders fail to understand. People can smell desperation. They can sense when you're trying to convince yourself as much as them. But they can also feel genuine belief radiating from you like heat from a fire. The secret? You must believe harder than anyone else in the room. Your conviction must be so solid, so unshakable, that it becomes a foundation others can build their courage upon. This isn't about optimism or positive thinking. This is about a bone-deep, blood-deep certainty that burns through doubt, like summer sun through morning fog. When I told my soldiers we would cross the Alps in winter with artillery, they believed it because I believed it first. When I promised victory in Egypt, standing under the shadow of the pyramids, they saw it as truth, because in my mind it was already done. Here is how you build this level of conviction. First, you must study your mission until you see its success as clearly as you see your own reflection. Second, you must find the absolute truth in why it must be done, not the political reason, not the practical reason, but the deep human truth that resonates in the soul. But remember this, conviction without clarity is just blind faith. Your belief must be specific, tangible, detailed. When I spoke of victory, I didn't deal in vague, inspirational phrases. I painted pictures so vivid soldiers could see themselves achieving it. I didn't just say we would win. I described exactly how, why, and what it would mean for each of them. The strongest conviction is built on understanding. Know your mission so deeply that doubts cannot find root. Know your people so completely that your belief in them becomes their belief in themselves. Know the stakes so clearly that hesitation becomes impossible. And here is the truth that transformed me from an artillery officer to an emperor. When your conviction becomes unshakable, you no longer need to demand loyalty. People give it freely because your certainty becomes their sanctuary. You see, the greatest leaders don't try to convince. They embody their beliefs so totally that doubt feels foolish in their presence. They don't push or pressure. They simply are so convinced that others cannot help but be drawn into their certainty. This is your task. Don't seek to command. Seek to believe so deeply, so completely, that your conviction becomes a force of nature. When you speak, let your words carry the weight of absolute certainty. When you act, let every movement radiate unshakable belief. For when you master this, when your conviction becomes as natural as breathing, you will discover what I learned on countless battlefields. People don't follow titles, they don't follow orders, they follow conviction. And the leader who believes hardest wins. There is a fundamental truth about human nature that most leaders never grasp. Fear can make people move, but only vision can make them march toward destiny. Let me show you the difference, for in this understanding lies the key to building not just an army, but a force that can reshape the world. I have seen commanders who ruled through fear. They got their obedience, yes, but what they never understood was that fear creates soldiers who duck when they should charge, who retreat when they should advance, who survive when they should conquer. When I took command of the army of Italy, I found troops who had been beaten into submission by their previous leaders. They followed orders, but without spirit, without fire. They were an army in uniform only, but I didn't need uniformed bodies. I needed warriors, so I showed them something beyond the next battle, beyond the next campaign. I painted a vision of glory so bright, it made their current hardships seem like merely the opening chapter of an epic tale. I didn't threaten them with punishment for failure. I showed them what victory would mean, not just for France, but for them, for their families, for history itself. This is the vital distinction. Fear speaks to the small part of a person, the part that wants to survive. Vision speaks to the giant within them, the part that wants to become legendary. When you master this understanding, you will never need to raise your voice to be heard. Let me tell you what I learned in Egypt, standing before the pyramids. I could have reminded the men of the consequences of defeat, of the desert's merciless nature, of the enemy's fierce reputation. Instead, I told them that 40 centuries of history were looking down upon them. I transformed a military campaign into a chance to carve their names into eternity. Here is how you build a vision that moves mountains. First, it must be grand enough to pull people out of their small concerns into something magnificent. Second, it must be specific enough that they can see their own role in its achievement. Third, and most crucially, it must connect to something eternal in the human spirit, the desire to create, to build, to leave a mark that time cannot erase. But remember this, a vision without practical steps is just a dream. I didn't just show my soldiers glory. I showed them the path to it. Each battle, each campaign was a step toward that greater destiny. Every hardship was reframed not as a burden to bear, but as a story they would tell their grandchildren. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders, the ability to transform duty into destiny. Anyone can make people work through fear, but if you want them to achieve the impossible, you must make them see the invisible. You must make them feel part of something greater than themselves. When my soldiers marched, they didn't march because they feared punishment. They marched because they saw themselves as the architects of a new world. When they fought, it wasn't just for victory, it was for their place in history. When they endured hardships, it wasn't because they feared their general. It was because they believed in their destiny. Here is your task. Stop thinking in terms of authority and start thinking in terms of legacy. Don't ask what you can make people do. Ask what you can make them want to become. Don't threaten with consequences. Inspire with possibilities. For when you master this, when you learn to lead through vision instead of fear, you will discover what I learned in campaigns across Europe. An army driven by fear can be defeated, but an army driven by vision, they become unstoppable. Remember, fear can make people obey, but vision makes them believe. And belief, my friends, can move mountains, cross Alps, and change the course of history itself. This is how you build not just an army, but a force that can reshape the world. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the most powerful secret I discovered in all my years of leadership. When you speak to a man's logic, you may win his mind. But when you speak to his identity, you capture his soul. I did not create the greatest army in Europe by appealing to reason. Logic tells a soldier to preserve his life, to avoid risk, to seek comfort. No. I created an unstoppable force by speaking to something deeper, their identity, their sense of who they were and who they could become. Let me tell you about a transformation I witnessed countless times. A peasant boy, barely able to hold a musket, arrives at camp. Logic would say he is nothing but cannon fodder. But I saw something else. I saw a soldier of France, a warrior of destiny, a man who would make history. And here is the crucial point. I spoke to him not as what he was, but as what he could become. Soldiers of France, I would say, not recruits, not conscripts, soldiers, warriors. Every word was chosen to reshape their self-image. When you changed how they saw themselves, you changed everything, their posture, their courage, their capabilities. This is what most leaders fail to understand. People will always act in alignment with who they believe themselves to be. Speak to a man as a coward, and he will flee. Speak to him as a hero, and he will show you bravery you didn't know existed. I remember one evening before a crucial battle. I didn't lecture my men about tactics or remind them of their duty. Instead, I walked among them speaking of glory, of legacy, of the stories their grandchildren would tell. With every word, I was helping them see themselves not as tired, cold soldiers, but as men on the cusp of legend. Here is how you master this art. First, you must understand that everyone, every single person, hungers for a noble identity. They want to be more than what they are. Second, you must learn to see the hero dormant within them, waiting to be awakened. Third, and most importantly, you must speak to that hero consistently, even when, especially when, they don't yet see it themselves. But remember this, empty flattery is worse than silence. The identity you speak to must be both aspirational and achievable. When I called my soldiers the finest army in Europe, it wasn't mere praise. It was a challenge, an identity they had to earn with every action, every decision, every battle. This is the fundamental truth I learned through years of leadership. People will move mountains to live up to a noble identity. They will endure any hardship, face any foe, overcome any obstacle, if it aligns with who they believe themselves to be. You see, I didn't just command an army, I forged a brotherhood of heroes. Every soldier in my ranks knew they weren't just fighting for France. They were fighting to live up to the identity they had embraced. They weren't following orders, they were fulfilling their destiny. Here is your task. Learn to see people not as they are, but as they could be. Then speak to that potential self so consistently, so convincingly, that it becomes more real to them than their current limitations. When you speak to your people, don't just give instructions, paint a picture of who they are becoming. Don't just set expectations. Create an identity they will fight to live up to. Don't just demand performance, awaken the giant within them. For when you master this, when you learn to speak not to their logic but to their identity, you will discover what I learned on countless battlefields. People will never exceed their own self-image, but change how they see themselves, and you change what becomes possible. Remember, logic may direct actions, but identity drives transformation. Speak to the hero within each person, and you won't need to push them forward. They will pull you with them as they charge toward their destiny. There are those who see the trappings of leadership, the flags, the ceremonies, the uniforms, as mere decoration. These people understand nothing of power. Let me show you how symbols, properly wielded, can forge bonds stronger than steel and loyalty deeper than blood. I learned this truth early in my campaigns. A flag is not just cloth. An eagle's standard is not just metal. A uniform is not just fabric. These are anchors for the soul, bridges between the individual and something greater than themselves. They are the physical embodiments of abstract loyalties, the tangible forms of intangible bonds. When I created the Legion of Honor, many questioned why we needed another medallion, another ceremony. They did not understand that I wasn't creating decorations. I was forging bonds. Every ribbon, every medal, every ceremonial gesture was a thread in a tapestry of belonging that would wrap around the hearts of my men. Let me tell you about the power of symbols. Before a crucial battle, I would often touch the eagle standard of a regiment, then speak to the men. That simple gesture connected their immediate task to centuries of Roman legacy, to the eternal quest for glory. It transformed a military maneuver into a sacred duty. This is what lesser leaders fail to grasp. Humans hunger for meaning. They yearn to be part of something larger than themselves. Symbols, rituals, and ceremonies aren't about pageantry. They're about connection. They bridge the gap between the mundane and the magnificent. I remember how the sight of our tricolor would straighten the spine of an exhausted soldier, how a drumbeat could synchronize the hearts of thousands, how a simple medallion could turn a peasant into a lion. These weren't tricks or manipulations. They were tools for touching the human soul. Here is how you master the power of symbolism. First, understand that every symbol must carry genuine meaning. Empty gestures breed cynicism. Second, ensure your symbols connect to deep human needs: belonging, recognition, purpose. Third, and most crucially, make your symbols sacred through consistent respect and meaningful ritual. But remember this: symbols are like weapons. Their power lies not in their existence, but in how skillfully you wield them. A flag waved too often becomes mere cloth. A ceremony performed without gravity becomes mere theater. Timing, context, and authenticity are everything. This is the art I perfected through years of leadership, using symbols not just to decorate, but to elevate. Every uniform became a second skin of honor. Every eagle standard became a north star of purpose. Every ceremony became a renewal of sacred bonds. You see, I didn't just lead armies. I created a world of meaning. The medals on a soldier's chest weren't just rewards. They were chapters in his story of transformation. The flags above weren't just markers. They were promises of shared destiny. The ceremonies weren't just traditions. They were bridges to immortality. Here is your task. Look at the symbols within your command. Are they mere decorations, or are they anchors for the soul? Do your ceremonies just fill time, or do they fill hearts? Are your traditions empty routines, or are they vessels of meaning? When you gather your people, don't just give them information. Give them ritual. Don't just hand out rewards. Create ceremonies of significance. Don't just tell them they belong. Show them through symbols that speak to their souls. For when you master this, when you learn to wield symbols like sacred blades, you will discover what I learned through building an empire. The strongest bonds are invisible, but through symbols, through ritual, through ceremony, you make them tangible. You make them unbreakable. Remember, a symbol without meaning is decoration, but a symbol infused with purpose, with tradition, with genuine significance, that becomes a banner under which people will live, fight, and die. That becomes a force that can unite hearts and move mountains. There is a truth about human nature that I learned not in military academies, but on the battlefields of Europe. No one will die for a general. No one will sacrifice for an abstract cause, but make a person feel essential, truly essential, and they will move heaven and earth to prove you right. I remember walking through camp on the eve of difficult battles, stopping to speak with individual soldiers. Not just the officers, but the common infantrymen, the artillery crews, the scouts. Each time I would mention something specific about their role, their unit's previous achievements, their unique importance to the coming battle. You see, most leaders make a critical mistake. They think grand speeches to large crowds are what inspire men. But I tell you this, it is the moment when you make each person feel seen, understood, and vital to the mission that you truly capture their hearts. Let me share with you what I discovered leading armies across continents. Every person, no matter their rank or role, carries the same burning question in their heart. Do I matter? Answer that question with conviction, with specificity, with truth, and you will unlock a force more powerful than any weapon. I once stopped during a campaign to compliment an artillery crew on the precise maintenance of their cannon. I didn't speak in generalities. I noted the specific way they had modified the wheel housings for better stability in muddy conditions. The pride that straightened their spines in that moment was worth more than 1,000 general orders. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders: the ability to make every person feel not just useful, but indispensable. Not through empty flattery, but through genuine recognition of their unique contribution to the greater cause. Here is how you master this art. First, you must truly understand how each person's role contributes to the whole. Second, you must be specific in your recognition. Vague praise is worse than none at all. Third, and most importantly, you must connect their individual excellence to the success of the entire mission. But remember this: making people feel essential isn't about making them feel comfortable. It's about making them feel responsible. When I told a unit they were crucial to our success, I wasn't relieving pressure. I was applying it. I was saying, we cannot succeed without you being your absolute best. This is the delicate balance I learned through years of leadership. People will bear any burden, face any challenge, if they believe two things: that their role is crucial and that they are uniquely capable of fulfilling it. You see, I didn't just command men. I made each one feel like a vital piece of a grand machine. The scout wasn't just gathering information, he was the eyes of the entire army. The supply officer wasn't just managing inventory, he was keeping the force alive. The drummer wasn't just keeping time, he was maintaining the heartbeat of the battalion. Here is your task. Look at each person under your command. Do they know, not just intellectually, but in their bones, how essential they are? Can they articulate exactly how their excellence contributes to the overall success? If not, you have work to do. When you speak to your people, don't just give orders, give context. Don't just assign tasks, explain their crucial importance. Don't just demand performance. Show them how their individual excellence ripples through the entire organization. For when you master this, when you learn to make every person feel truly essential, you will discover what I learned leading armies. People don't give their best out of duty. They don't sacrifice out of obligation. They give everything they have because they believe their individual contribution is irreplaceable. Remember, no one wants to be a cog in a machine, but make them feel like the linchpin that holds everything together, and they will astound you with their dedication, their innovation, their willingness to sacrifice for the cause. This is how you build not just an army, but a force of individuals who know their worth and will fight to prove it. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the difference between an army and an unstoppable force. Anyone can train a body to march, to shoot, to follow orders. But if you want to create warriors who will follow you through the gates of hell itself, you must train their spirit. I have seen perfectly drilled battalions break at the first sound of cannon fire. I have seen technically perfect soldiers flee at the sight of blood. Why? Because while their hands were trained, their hearts remained weak. This is the fatal flaw in most military training. It focuses on the physical while neglecting the spiritual. Let me tell you what I learned crossing the Alps in winter, watching men drag artillery up frozen mountains. Technical skill alone is worthless without inner fire. A soldier who knows how to shoot but doesn't know why he fights will drop his weapon at the first real test. This is what separates mere troops from unconquerable forces: the spirit, the inner steel that turns hardship into testimony, that transforms obstacles into opportunities for glory, that makes defeat impossible, not through skill, but through sheer force of will. I remember watching new recruits arrive at camp. Other commanders immediately sent them to learn marching formations, weapon drills, tactical maneuvers. But I knew better. First, we had to forge their spirit. We had to install in them an unshakable pride, an untouchable sense of honor, a warrior's heart that would never accept defeat. Here is how you begin this transformation. First, understand that every person has within them a sleeping giant of potential. Your job isn't to create strength, it's to awaken it. Second, realize that spirit is forged through challenge, not comfort. Every hardship must be reframed as an opportunity to prove one's worth. But remember this crucial truth: you cannot forge spirit through fear or force. The spirit must be awakened through pride, through honor, through the desire to become something greater than oneself. Every challenge you present must be not just a test, but a chance for glory. I developed a system that transformed peasants into legends. We started with small challenges, tasks that seemed difficult, but were achievable with extra effort. With each success, their confidence grew. Then we increased the difficulty, but always framed each challenge as an opportunity to join the ranks of the extraordinary. You see, I didn't just train soldiers, I forged warriors. Every drill was not just about perfecting technique, but about building unshakable confidence. Every hardship was not just an obstacle to overcome, but a story they would tell with pride. Every challenge was not just a test of skill, but a chance to prove their exceptional nature. Here is how you master this art. First, never separate physical training from spiritual strengthening. Every tactical lesson must also be a lesson in courage, in honor, in indomitable will. Second, create challenges that test not just ability, but character. Third, and most importantly, help them see their own growth, their own transformation into something greater than they were. This is what most leaders never grasp. The strongest weapon any warrior carries isn't in their hands, it's in their heart. A spirit properly forged becomes an unstoppable force. It turns exhaustion into second wind, transforms fear into fuel, makes the impossible merely difficult, and the difficult routine. When you train your people, don't just show them what to do, show them who they are becoming. Don't just teach skills, forge character. Don't just prepare them for the task, prepare them for greatness. For when you master this, when you learn to train not just the hands, but the heart, you will discover what I learned leading armies across Europe. Technical excellence can win battles, but spiritual strength? That wins wars, that changes history, that transforms ordinary men into legends. Remember, anyone can train bodies, but the leader who knows how to forge spirits, to awaken the warrior within each heart, to turn inner fire into unstoppable force, that leader becomes not just a commander, but a maker of history. There is an art to praise that most leaders never master. They shower empty compliments, like a child scattering seeds carelessly without purpose, without understanding of what they wish to grow. Let me show you how precise, powerful praise can transform ordinary men into extraordinary forces. I learned early in my campaigns that praise is like gunpowder. Its power lies not in quantity, but in precise application. A single word of specific earned recognition can do more to steel a man's resolve than 1,000 generic compliments. Let me tell you about a moment after the Battle of Marengo. Instead of giving a grand speech praising everyone, I walked among the troops, stopping before specific units. To one artillery crew, I didn't say, "Well done." I said, "Your third volley at 2 o'clock turned the tide." That precision saved 1,000 lives today. The difference in impact was extraordinary. You see, most leaders don't understand the true purpose of praise. It's not about making people feel good. It's about crystallizing excellence. When you precisely name what someone did right, you create a template for future greatness. Here is what separates meaningful praise from empty flattery: specificity, timing, and connection to larger purpose. When I recognized a soldier's actions, I would name the exact moment, the specific deed, and its impact on our greater mission. This wasn't just recognition, it was instruction, written in the language of honor. I remember a young officer who led a difficult retreat, keeping his unit together under heavy fire. When I praised him, I didn't speak of his courage in general terms. I detailed how his calm voice steadied his men, how his tactical decisions preserved our resources, how his leadership transformed potential disaster into strategic advantage. Each word was a chisel, carving a deeper understanding of excellence. Here is how you master the art of praise. First, be specific. Name exactly what was done right and why it mattered. Second, connect individual excellence to group success. Show how personal achievement strengthens the whole. Third, and most crucially, time your praise for maximum impact. Sometimes immediate recognition, sometimes thoughtful reflection after the fact. But remember this: praise given too freely loses its power. It must be earned, specific, and purposeful. When I praised a unit for their discipline, it wasn't just about what they had done. It was about setting a standard for what I expected them to do next. This is the delicate balance I perfected through years of leadership, using praise not just to reward but to teach, not just to recognize past achievement, but to shape future performance. Every word of recognition was also a lesson in excellence. You see, I didn't just compliment my men, I used praise to build a culture of greatness. When I recognized specific actions, I was showing everyone present exactly what excellence looked like in practice. Each piece of praise became a standard against which others would measure themselves. Here is your task. Examine how you praise. Are your words specific enough to teach? Do they connect individual excellence to group success? Does your recognition serve as both reward and lesson? When you praise your people, don't just say good job. Name the specific actions that made the difference. Don't just recognize effort. Highlight the impact. Don't just acknowledge success. Use it to teach others what excellence looks like. For when you master this, when you learn to use praise as precisely as a surgeon's blade, you will discover what I learned leading armies. The right words, at the right moment, delivered with specific recognition of excellence, can double a person's resolve, triple their loyalty, and multiply their future performance. Remember, flattery is for courtiers, but precise, powerful praise, that is a tool of transformation. It doesn't just recognize greatness, it teaches it, rewards it, and multiplies it throughout your ranks. This is how you turn individual excellence into organizational greatness. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you one of the most crucial lessons I learned in my rise from artillery officer to emperor. He who controls the narrative controls everything. The greatest battles are not won with cannons and cavalry, but with words and perception. I remember the retreat from Russia, a devastating campaign by any measure. But do you know what transformed that potential destruction of morale into a rallying cry for future victories? The story we told. Not lies, mind you, but the deliberate shaping of how events were understood, remembered, and used to fuel future. Triumph. This is what most leaders fail to grasp. Every event, every success, every setback has many possible interpretations. Your job as a leader is not to lie about reality, but to shape how that reality is understood and what meaning is drawn from it. Let me tell you about the Battle of Arcole. When I seized the flag and led the charge across the bridge, it wasn't just a tactical decision. It was a moment I knew would become legend. The physical act lasted minutes, but the story? That story inspired armies for years to come. Why? Because we understood how to frame it, how to tell it, how to use it. Here is how you master the art of narrative control. First, understand that every event has multiple truths within it. Your job is to emphasize the ones that serve your greater purpose. Second, realize that timing is everything. Sometimes immediate communication is crucial. Other times, strategic silence lets the right story emerge naturally. Third, and most importantly, always connect current events to your larger vision. But remember this, controlling the narrative isn't about deception, it's about direction. It's about helping people understand events in ways that strengthen rather than weaken them. When we faced setbacks, I never lied about our losses, but I always framed them within the context of our ultimate victory. I developed a system for this. Every victory was immediately connected to our larger mission. Every setback was framed as a lesson that would make us stronger. Every sacrifice was given meaning by connecting it to our historic purpose. This wasn't manipulation, it was leadership through strategic communication. You see, I didn't just command armies, I shaped how they understood their own story. A frozen march wasn't just suffering, it was proof of extraordinary strength. A difficult battle wasn't just a challenge, it was an opportunity to show unprecedented courage. A temporary defeat wasn't an end, it was the setup for an even greater comeback. Here is how you apply this in practice. First, be first with the news, good or bad. The first version of events often becomes the dominant narrative. Second, always provide context that connects to your larger vision. Third, give people language to understand and share their experiences in empowering ways. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders. The ability to shape not just what people do, but how they understand what they do. Every order, Every action, every outcome must be part of a coherent story that drives toward your ultimate goal. When you communicate with your people, don't just give information, give meaning. Don't just report events, frame them. Don't just acknowledge reality, show how it fits into the greater story you're all writing together. For when you master this, when you learn to shape the narrative without distorting the truth, you will discover what I learned building an empire. People don't just follow orders, they follow stories. They don't just obey commands, they fulfill destinies. They don't just do their jobs, they live their legends. Remember, the leader who controls the narrative controls more than information. They control meaning itself. And when you control meaning, you control motivation, morale, and the very spirit that determines victory or defeat. This is your most powerful weapon as a leader. Not the ability to give orders, but the power to shape how events are understood, remembered, and used to fuel future greatness. Master this, and you master the art of true leadership. There is a delicate art to discipline that most leaders never grasp. They think it's about punishment, about breaking spirits to ensure obedience. These fools understand nothing. Let me show you how true discipline, discipline that uplifts rather than crushes, can transform an ordinary force into an extraordinary one. I learned this truth early in my campaigns. The strongest discipline isn't imposed from without. It grows from within. When I took command of the Army of Italy, I found troops who had been beaten into submission by their previous commanders. They were obedient, yes, but they were also broken. I needed warriors, not slaves. Let me tell you about a young lieutenant who made a tactical error that cost us dearly in battle. The traditional response would have been severe punishment. Instead, I called him to my tent and asked him to explain his thinking, step by step. Then I showed him not just what he did wrong, but what he could become by learning from this moment. That officer later became one of my most brilliant commanders. You see, most leaders confuse discipline with punishment. They think fear of consequences will drive excellence. But I tell you this, fear creates soldiers who do only what they must. Pride creates warriors who do more than you could ever demand. Here is what separates true discipline from mere obedience. True discipline is about standards, not punishments. It's about creating a culture where excellence is the expectation, where anything less feels wrong, not because it will be punished, but because it violates one's own sense of honor. I remember addressing a unit that had performed poorly in battle. Instead of berating them, I spoke of their regiment's history, of the honor they carried, of the standards they had temporarily forgotten. I wasn't gentle, but I attacked the gap between their actions and their potential, not their worth as soldiers or men. Here is how you master this art. First, establish clear, high standards that uplift rather than oppress. Second, enforce these standards through appeal to pride and honor rather than fear of punishment. Third, and most crucially, make every correction a lesson in excellence rather than an exercise in humiliation. But remember this, discipline without development is just oppression. Every standard you set, every correction you make, must serve to elevate, not diminish. When I disciplined my officers, it wasn't to break them, it was to forge them into something greater. This is the balance I perfected through years of leadership, being strict without being cruel, demanding without being demeaning, correcting without crushing. Every instance of discipline became an opportunity for growth, every mistake a stepping stone to greater capability. You see, I didn't just command obedience, I cultivated excellence. When standards were violated, I didn't just punish the violation, I reinforced the vital importance of the standard itself. I made them understand why excellence mattered, not just what would happen if they failed. Here is your task. Look at how you handle discipline. Does your approach build people up or tear them down? Does it inspire greater achievement or merely prevent failure? Does it create warriors who think and adapt or just soldiers who obey? When you must correct your people, don't just point out errors. Illuminate the path to excellence. Don't just demand better. Show them what better looks like. Don't just enforce standards. Make them understand why these standards exist and what they make possible. For when you master this, when you learn to discipline in ways that elevate rather than eliminate, you will discover what I learned leading. Armies, the strongest discipline isn't maintained through fear of punishment, but through pride in excellence. Remember, anyone can break spirits to ensure obedience. But the true art of leadership is to strengthen spirits while demanding excellence. This is how you build not just an obedient force, but an unstoppable one, where discipline isn't a burden to bear, but a standard to uphold with pride. There is a truth about leadership that I learned not in military academies, but in the blood and mud of countless battlefields. The most powerful command you can give is your example. A leader who stands behind his troops may drive them forward, but a leader who stands before them pulls them to greatness. I remember the crossing of the Alps, one of our most legendary campaigns. I didn't sit on a horse issuing commands from comfort while my men struggled through the snow. I walked alongside them. When the artillery got stuck, I put my own hands on the ropes. The soldiers who saw this didn't just obey my orders, they matched my determination. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders, the willingness to do what you ask of others. Not occasionally, not when it's convenient, but always, every time, without exception. Because the moment you exempt yourself from the standards you set, you lose something that no amount of authority can replace: moral authority. Let me tell you about a battle where everything went wrong. The enemy had superior numbers, better position, and our supplies were running low. In that moment, I didn't retreat to the safety of the rear to maintain strategic oversight. I rode to the front where the fighting was fiercest, not out of bravado, but because I knew that in moments of crisis, leaders must be seen. Here is what most fail to understand about leading from the front. It's not about heroics. It's not about taking unnecessary risks. It's about showing, not telling, what courage looks like in action. It's about demonstrating that the standards you set are not just orders to be followed, but a way of being that you yourself embody. I developed a system for this. Before asking anything significant of my troops, I would first demonstrate it myself. If we needed to march faster, I walked at the pace I demanded. If we needed to attack a difficult position, I led the charge. If we needed to go on reduced rations, I ate less than anyone. But remember this crucial distinction. Leading from the front isn't about being reckless. It's about being present at the decisive point, the moment and place where your example will have the greatest impact. Sometimes that's in the thick of battle. Sometimes it's in the quiet moments of hardship. But it's always where your people need to see leadership in action. You see, I didn't just command armies, I showed them the way. Every order I gave was backed by my own actions. Every standard I set was one I first met myself. Every sacrifice I demanded was one I made first. This isn't martyrdom, it's leadership in its purest form. Here is how you master this art. First, never ask others to do what you wouldn't do yourself. Second, be visible in moments of difficulty, not just giving orders, but showing how to overcome. Third, and most importantly, make your example consistent. One moment of hypocrisy can undo years of good leadership. This is what transforms a group of individuals into an unstoppable force, when they see their leader not just pointing the way, but walking it. When they know that the person giving orders truly understands what those orders mean in practice. When you lead your people, don't just tell them what to do, show them how to be. Don't just set standards, live them. Don't just demand excellence, demonstrate it in everything you do. For when you master this, when you truly learn to lead from the front, you will discover what I learned through years of command. People may obey orders out of duty, but they follow example. From inspiration. They may meet requirements out of obligation, but they exceed them when they see their leader doing the same. Remember, the most powerful command you can give isn't in your words, it's in your actions. When you truly lead from the front, you create not just followers, but fellow warriors who will match your courage, your dedication, and your excellence step for step. This is how you build not just an army, but a force that moves as one, because they're not following orders. They're following a leader who shows them what excellence looks like in action. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the secret that transformed peasant boys into warriors willing to die for a cause. People don't follow missions, they follow meaning. They don't die for strategies, they die for something that echoes in the depths of their souls. I learned this truth in Egypt, standing before the pyramids. I could have spoken to my men about military objectives, about tactical advantages, about strategic necessities. Instead, I told them that 40 centuries of history were looking down upon them. In that moment, I wasn't giving them a mission. I was giving them a place in the eternal story of human greatness. This is what most leaders fail to understand. The human heart doesn't stir for objectives and goals. It awakens for glory, for legacy, for the chance to be part of something that will outlive the individual. I didn't just give my soldiers orders, I gave them a destiny to fulfill. Let me tell you about a young sergeant I once observed. His unit was tasked with holding a seemingly insignificant position. Rather than simply relaying the tactical importance, he told his men about the families in the nearby village, about how their stand here would be remembered for generations by those they protected. That unit held against overwhelming odds, not for military necessity, but for eternal meaning. Here is how you begin to master this art. First, understand that every task, no matter how mundane, connects to something deeper. Second, learn to find and articulate the human truth behind the tactical necessity. Third, and most crucially, make that meaning personal to each individual under your command. But remember this, you cannot manufacture meaning. You must find the authentic truth that resonates in the heart. When I spoke to my soldiers about glory, about legacy, about changing the course of history, these weren't empty phrases. They were deep truths that each man could feel in his bones. I developed a system for this transformation. Every order was accompanied by its meaning. Every mission was connected to its larger purpose. Every sacrifice was linked to its eternal significance. This wasn't manipulation. It was illumination of the deeper truth behind our actions. You see, I didn't just command an army. I led a force of destiny makers. When we marched, we weren't just covering distance. We were walking into history. When we fought, we weren't just engaging the enemy. We were shaping the future. When we suffered, it wasn't just hardship. It was the price of immortality. Here is how you apply this in practice. First, find the larger meaning in your mission, not the strategic value, but the human significance. Second, connect that meaning to each person's individual story and aspirations. Third, reinforce this connection consistently, especially in moments of hardship. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders, the ability to transform tactical objectives into personal meaning. When I needed a position held, I didn't just explain its military importance. I showed how holding that ground would echo through history. When you lead your people, don't just give them tasks, give them purpose. Don't just assign missions, create meaning. Don't just demand sacrifice, show them what their sacrifice will make possible. For when you master this, when you learn to make purpose personal, you will discover what I learned leading armies. People can endure any how if they understand their why. They can face any challenge if they know their actions will echo through time. Remember this above all. The strongest loyalty isn't to a mission, but to meaning. Not to a strategy, but to significance. Not to a plan, but to purpose. When you make the mission personal, when you connect it to something eternal in each person's heart, you create a force that cannot be stopped. This is how you build not just an army, but a legion of destiny makers. Not just soldiers following orders, but warriors fulfilling their personal legend. For when each person sees their role not just as a task to complete, but as a destiny to fulfill, they become unstoppable, make every mission matter, make every action meaningful, make every sacrifice sacred. This is how you transform ordinary men into extraordinary forces, by giving them not just something to do, but something to become. There is a profound truth about human nature that I discovered, not in victory, but in the darkest moments of campaign. Every weakness, every fear, every doubt can be transformed into fuel for extraordinary achievement. The art lies not in eliminating weakness, but in alchemizing it into strength. I remember a young officer who came to me, trembling with fear before his first major battle. Other commanders would have dismissed him as a coward, but I saw something different. I saw raw honesty that could be forged into rare courage. I told him, "Your fear shows you understand the gravity of command. Now, let's transform that understanding into leadership." This is what most leaders fail to grasp. Weakness isn't the opposite of strength. It's often the seed of it. The soldier who feels fear most keenly can become the one who understands courage most deeply. The leader who knows doubt intimately can develop the most unshakable resolve. Let me tell you about the march to Moscow. In those bitter weeks, every man felt weakness. Instead of denying it, we transformed it. The cold that threatened to break us became proof of our exceptional endurance. The hunger that gnawed at us became evidence of our extraordinary will. Every step that tested our limits became testimony to our unstoppable nature. Here is how you begin this transformation. First, acknowledge weakness without shame. It is simply information about where strength must be built. Second, understand that every weakness points to a potential strength. Fear of failure can become relentless preparation. Sensitivity to criticism can become exceptional attention to detail. Third, and most importantly, show your people how to make this transformation themselves. But remember this crucial truth. The goal isn't to eliminate weakness, it's to transmute it into power. When one of my units showed hesitation before a difficult assault, I didn't berate their lack of courage. I showed them how their caution could make them more effective than blind bravery. I developed a system for this alchemy. Every time a weakness emerged, we would immediately begin the work of transformation. Self-doubt became self-examination. Anxiety became heightened awareness. Hesitation became thorough preparation. This wasn't positive thinking, it was practical transformation. You see, I didn't just command men, I taught them the art of internal alchemy. Every weakness became a challenge to overcome. Every fear a source of focus, every doubt a driver of excellence. This transformation wasn't about denying reality, it was about reshaping it. Here's how you master this art. First, create an environment where weakness can be acknowledged without shame. Second, show the path from weakness to strength through specific, practical steps. Third, celebrate not just strength itself, but the journey of transformation. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders, the ability to see the potential strength hidden within each weakness. When I found a soldier paralyzed by the fear of death, I didn't dismiss him. I showed him how that fear could make him more alert, more prepared, more effective than his fearless comrades. When you lead your people, don't just demand strength, show them how to build it from their weaknesses. Don't just punish failure, reveal how it points the way to future success. Don't just call for courage, show them how their fears can fuel their greatness. For when you master this, when you learn to transform weakness into weapon, you will discover what I learned through years of command. The strongest warriors aren't those without weakness, but those who have learned to turn their weaknesses into strengths. Remember, every doubt can become determination. Every fear can become focus. Every weakness contains within it the seed of exceptional strength. Your task as a leader is not to eliminate these things, but to show your people how to transform them. This is how you build not just an army, but a force that grows stronger with every challenge. Because when people learn to transform their weaknesses into weapons, their doubts into determination, their fears into fuel, they become truly unstoppable. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you a truth that transformed my ability to build and maintain unstoppable forces. The secret to massive achievement lies not in creating one giant victory, but in dividing glory, so that every person tastes triumph and hungers for more. I learned this early in my campaigns. A victory that only glorifies the general creates soldiers who follow orders. But a victory where every unit, every squad, every individual can point to their crucial role creates warriors who initiate success. The difference is everything. Let me tell you about the Battle of Austerlitz, one of my greatest victories. The aftermath, I didn't simply celebrate our triumph as a whole. I went among the troops, naming specific units and their crucial actions. The 4th Infantry's stand at 9 o'clock made our flanking maneuver possible. The 3rd Hussars' charge at noon broke their resolve. The artillery's precision at the critical moment turned the tide. This is what most leaders fail to understand. People don't just want to be part of victory. They want to see their individual contribution to it. They want to know that their specific actions mattered, that their particular struggle made a difference. Here's how you master this art. First, break down every major victory into its component parts. Find the crucial moments, the pivotal actions, the essential contributions that built the final triumph. Second, ensure each unit, each team, each individual can see their role in that success. Third, and most importantly, make the recognition as specific as the contribution. But remember, this isn't about false praise or participation trophies. This is about legitimate recognition of real contribution. When I divided glory, I was precise and truthful, because soldiers know the difference between earned recognition and empty flattery. I developed a system for this. Before every major campaign, I would structure our forces so that each unit had their own objectives, their own opportunities for distinction. During battle, I kept track of specific achievements. Afterward, I ensured that each vital contribution was recognized and recorded. You see, I didn't just win battles, I created opportunities for multiple victories within each campaign. The cavalry didn't just support the infantry's success, they had their own moments of glory. The artillery didn't just soften targets, they had their own triumphs to celebrate. Each victory contained 100 victories. Here is how you implement this approach. First, structure your operations so that different units have distinct opportunities to excel. Second, track and recognize specific contributions as they happen. Third, ensure that every victory story includes multiple chapters, each highlighting different heroes. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders. The ability to see and celebrate the many triumphs that make up one victory. When we took a city, I didn't just plant our flag. I ensured that every unit knew how their specific actions made that moment possible. When you lead your people, don't just celebrate the final outcome. Celebrate the crucial steps that led there. Don't just praise the victory, praise the specific actions that built it. Don't just reward success, reward the individual contributions that made it possible. For when you master this, when you learn to divide glory without diminishing it, you will discover what I learned leading armies. Success that's shared multiplies. Victory that's divided grows. Achievement that's distributed creates hunger for more. Remember, the greatest victories aren't single moments of triumph, but collections of individual achievements, each worthy of recognition, each crucial to the whole. Your task as a leader is to ensure that every person can see their part in that tapestry of success. This is how you build not just successful operations, but a culture of achievement. When people know their individual excellence will be seen, recognized, and celebrated, they don't wait for orders to excel. They actively seek opportunities to distinguish themselves. Make every victory personal. Make every triumph specific. Make every success a story with many heroes. This is how you transform individual achievements into unstoppable momentum. how you turn single victories into cultures of constant success. There is a fundamental truth about leadership that I learned not in victory, but in the frozen depths of Russia. Loyalty is not a command to be given, but a pact to be forged. And like any pact, it must be sealed with mutual sacrifice, mutual commitment, mutual trust. I remember standing with my men in the bitter cold, sharing their hardships, eating the same frozen bread, sleeping in the same harsh conditions. This wasn't strategy, it was necessity. But in those moments, something profound was revealed. True loyalty isn't born from authority, but from shared sacrifice. This is what most leaders fail to grasp. You cannot demand loyalty while standing apart from the struggles of your people. Every privilege you claim that you deny to others, every hardship you impose that you yourself avoid, becomes a crack in the foundation of trust. Let me tell you about a crucial moment during the Egyptian campaign. Our supplies were running dangerously low, and rationing became necessary. I didn't just order the troops to accept smaller portions. I took less than anyone. When they saw their general growing gaunt alongside them, their commitment didn't waver. They understood that we were truly in it together. Here is how you begin to forge this unbreakable pact. First, understand that every order you give is a promise you make, a promise that this sacrifice serves a worthy purpose. Second, demonstrate through your actions that you would never ask of others what you wouldn't demand of yourself. Third, and most crucially, share not just the glory of success, but the burden of hardship. But remember this vital truth. Loyalty based on fear or force is brittle. It breaks at the first real test. True loyalty, the kind that survives defeat and darkness, is forged in the fires of shared sacrifice and mutual respect. I developed a system for building this deeper loyalty. Before asking for any significant sacrifice, I would first demonstrate my own commitment. Before demanding extra effort, I would show extra dedication. Before requiring courage, I would display it myself. This wasn't manipulation. It was leadership through example. You see, I didn't just command armies, I forged bonds of mutual commitment. Every order I gave was backed by my own actions. Every sacrifice I demanded was matched by my own privation. Every risk I required was paralleled by my own exposure to danger. Here's how you master this art. First, examine every demand you make of your people. Are you willing to meet the same standard? Second, look for opportunities to share in their challenges, not just their triumphs. Third, ensure that your words and actions constantly reinforce the message. We are in this together. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders. The understanding that loyalty is a two-way street. When I needed my men to stand firm in the face of overwhelming odds, they didn't do it because of my rank. They did it because they had seen me stand with them in countless smaller moments. When you lead your people, don't just give orders, make commitments. Don't just demand sacrifice, share in it. Don't just expect loyalty, earn it through your own unwavering dedication to your people and your shared mission. For when you master this, when you truly understand that loyalty must be mutual, you will discover what I learned through years of command. The strongest bonds aren't forged by authority, but by shared experience, shared sacrifice, and shared commitment to something greater than ourselves. Remember, every time you ask for sacrifice, you make a promise. Every time you demand courage, you accept an obligation. Every time you require loyalty, you take on a sacred duty to be worthy of it. This is how you build not just an army, but a brotherhood, not just a force, but a family. Because when loyalty becomes a mutual pact, when leaders and followers are bound by shared sacrifice and common purpose, you create something that cannot be broken by hardship, defeat, or even death itself. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you one of the most counterintuitive truths I learned while building an empire. Conflict within your ranks, properly channeled, can forge stronger bonds than peace ever could. The art lies not in eliminating tension, but in transforming it into collective strength. I remember watching two of my best generals nearly come to blows over strategy before a crucial battle. Lesser commanders would have demanded blind obedience, silencing the dispute. Instead, I channeled their passion into a deeper examination of our options, leading to a plan far superior to what either had originally proposed. Their competition made us stronger. This is what most leaders fail to understand. A force without internal tension is not unified, it's unconscious. The goal isn't to eliminate conflict, but to harness it. Like a blacksmith working metal, you need both heat and pressure to forge something unbreakable. Let me tell you about the rivalries I deliberately cultivated between different regiments in my army. Each unit strove to outdo the others in courage, in discipline, in achievement. This wasn't division, it was multiplication of excellence. Their competition to be the best made every unit stronger. Here's how you begin to master this art. First, understand that conflict itself is neutral. It's how you channel it that matters. Second, learn to distinguish between destructive personal animosity and productive professional rivalry. Third, and most crucially, create frameworks where competition serves collective success. But remember this vital distinction. Uncontrolled conflict destroys. Channeled conflict creates. When I found units or officers in conflict, I didn't just demand peace. I gave them challenges that could only be overcome through combined effort, transforming rivals into reluctant but effective allies. I developed a system for this alchemy. When tensions arose, I would immediately create situations where the conflicting parties had to succeed or fail together. I would give rivals complementary missions that required mutual support. I would transform personal competition into collective achievement. You see, I didn't just command men, I orchestrated energy. Every rivalry became fuel for excellence, every disagreement became a source of innovation, every conflict became an opportunity to forge stronger bonds through shared challenges. Here is how you implement this approach. First, create structured opportunities for competitive excellence that serve the greater mission. Second, establish clear frameworks where different approaches and perspectives can contend productively. Third, ensure that every competition ultimately serves collective success. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders: the ability to see conflict not as a problem to eliminate, but as energy to be harnessed. When my officers argued passionately about strategy, I didn't silence them. I challenged them to prove their ideas through results. When you lead your people, don't just demand harmony, create purpose that transcends differences. Don't just suppress conflict, channel it into improvement. Don't just enforce peace. Forge unity through shared challenges. For when you master this, when you learn to harness internal tension rather than fear it, you will discover what I learned. Leading armies. The strongest unity isn't the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose greater than any individual difference. Remember, conflict is energy. Like any form of energy, it can destroy if left unchecked, but it can also create if properly channeled. Your task as a leader is not to eliminate this energy, but to direct it toward productive ends. Here is how you transform rivalry into strength. First, ensure that all competition serves the greater mission. Second, create challenges that require cooperation, even between rivals. Third, reward not just individual excellence, but the ability to achieve it while enhancing collective success. This is how you build not just an army, but an unstoppable force. When every internal tension becomes fuel for improvement, when every rivalry drives excellence, when every conflict forges stronger bonds, you create something that cannot be broken because it has been strengthened by the very forces that might have torn it apart. Make conflict serve purpose. Make rivalry fuel excellence. Make tension forge bonds. This is how you transform what might have been weakness into unbreakable strength. There is a profound truth about human nature that I discovered not in military texts, but in the hearts of men facing death. No one dies for money. No one sacrifices everything for mere strategy. They die for meaning. They sacrifice for legacy. They give their all for something that echoes beyond their own existence. I remember standing before my troops on the eve of impossible battles. I never spoke to them about tactical advantages or material rewards. Instead, I showed them how this moment, this battle, this sacrifice would echo through centuries. I made them see themselves not as mere soldiers, but as architects of history. This is what most leaders fail to grasp. The human spirit hungers for meaning beyond the immediate. Your people don't just need to understand what they're doing, they need to understand why it matters in the grand scheme of existence. Let me tell you about the Battle of the Pyramids. When I told my men that 40 centuries looked down upon them, I wasn't just being poetic. I was connecting their immediate actions to the eternal story of human greatness. In that moment, they weren't just fighting another battle. They were writing their names in the book of history. Here is how you begin to create this transcendent meaning. First, understand that every mission, no matter how mundane, connects to something eternal, the quest for excellence, the triumph of human spirit, the advancement of civilization itself. Second, learn to articulate this connection in ways that resonate in the depths of the soul. Third, and most crucially, make this greater meaning personal to each individual under your command. But remember this vital truth. You cannot manufacture meaning. You must reveal the authentic greatness inherent in your mission. When I spoke to my soldiers about glory, about legacy, about changing the course of history, these weren't empty phrases. They were deep truths that each man could feel in his bones. I developed a system for elevating ordinary missions to extraordinary, meaning every objective was connected to its historical significance. Every action was linked to its eternal impact. Every sacrifice was framed within the context of lasting legacy. This wasn't manipulation, it was illumination of the deeper truth behind our actions. You see, I didn't just command armies, I led forces of destiny. When we marched, we weren't just covering distance, we were walking the path of legends. When we fought, we weren't just engaging the enemy, we were shaping the future of civilization. When we suffered, it wasn't just hardship, it was the price of immortality. Here is how you master this art. First, find the larger meaning in everything you do, not just the strategic value, but the human significance. Second, connect that meaning to timeless themes that resonate in every human heart: courage, excellence, legacy, the advancement of human possibility. Third, make this meaning so vivid, so personal, that every individual can see their role in this greater story. This is what separates true leaders from mere commanders: the ability to transform ordinary actions into chapters of an extraordinary story. When I needed men to hold a position against overwhelming odds, I didn't just explain its tactical importance, I showed them how their stand would be remembered for generations. When you lead your people, don't just give them tasks, give them purpose. Don't just assign missions, create meaning. Don't just demand effort. Show them how their actions will echo through time. For when you master this, when you learn to make every mission bigger than life itself, you will discover what I learned leading armies. People can endure any hardship, face any odds, overcome any obstacle when they believe their actions serve something greater than themselves. Remember, the strongest motivation isn't money, isn't comfort, isn't even survival. It's meaning. It's the belief that what we do matters not just now, but forever. That our actions will be remembered, that our courage will be celebrated, that our sacrifice will inspire long after we are gone. This is how you build not just an army, but a force of destiny. When each person sees their role not just as a job to do, but as a legacy to create, they become unstoppable. For nothing is impossible to those who believe they're writing history. Listen carefully, for I am about to share with you the ultimate transformation that every great leader must achieve. The moment when you no longer command followers, but lead believers. When you no longer have soldiers, but brothers. This is the final alchemy of leadership, and its greatest triumph. I remember the exact moment I first witnessed this transformation. It was during the Italian campaign when I found my men discussing battle plans around a campfire, not because they were ordered to, but because they had internalized our mission as their own. They weren't following orders, they were living. Our shared destiny, this is what most leaders never achieve, the transformation from external authority to internal conviction. When your people no longer move because you push them, but because they are pulled by the same vision that drives you. When your mission becomes their mission, your purpose, their purpose. Let me tell you about the Old Guard, my most elite unit. They didn't follow me because I was their emperor. They followed because we had forged something deeper than rank, more powerful than authority. We had become brothers in the truest sense, bound not by blood but by shared vision, shared struggle, shared destiny. Here is how this final transformation begins. First, understand that true brotherhood isn't created by words or ceremonies. It's forged in shared challenges, mutual sacrifice, and common purpose. Second, recognize that this transformation happens soul by soul, heart by heart. Third, and most crucially, accept that you must become more than a leader. You must become a living embodiment of the values and vision you represent. But remember this eternal truth. This transformation cannot be forced or faked. It must grow naturally from genuine shared experience, authentic mutual respect, and real sacrifices made together in pursuit of something greater than ourselves. I developed a system for nurturing this transformation. Every hardship became an opportunity for shared struggle. Every victory became a moment of collective pride. Every setback became a chance to demonstrate unwavering mutual loyalty. This wasn't strategy. It was the natural evolution of true leadership. You see, I didn't just build an army. I forged a brotherhood. When we fought, it wasn't for glory or gain, but for each other. When we sacrificed, it wasn't because of orders, but because we each knew the others would do the same. When we achieved the impossible, it wasn't through command, but through collective will. Here is how you master this final art. First, be worthy of the transformation you seek to create. Your character must merit brotherhood. Second, create opportunities for genuine bonds to form through shared challenges and mutual support. Third, nurture the subtle shift from external motivation to internal conviction. This is what separates legendary leaders from mere commanders. The ability to transform a collection of individuals into a family of purpose. When my men called me Little Corporal, it wasn't a joke. It was a term of brotherhood, acknowledging that rank had become secondary to the bonds we shared. When you lead your people, don't just direct their actions, shape their aspirations. Don't just command their obedience, earn their brotherhood. Don't just demand their loyalty, deserve their love. For when you master this, when you achieve this final transformation, you will discover what I learned through years of leadership. The strongest force on earth isn't an army of soldiers following orders, but a brotherhood of believers pursuing a shared destiny. Remember, authority can compel bodies, but only brotherhood can command souls. Rank can demand attention, but only genuine bonds can inspire devotion. Position can require obedience, but only true fellowship can create unstoppable unity. This is how you build not just an effective force, but an invincible family. When each person knows in their heart that they're not just part of an organization, but part of a brotherhood, when they feel in their souls that they're not just serving a leader, but standing with a family, they become capable of anything. Make every challenge an opportunity for bonds to strengthen. Make every struggle aris bihias, forge for brotherhood. Make every mission a chance for family to prove itself. This is how you transform followers into family, soldiers into brothers, and ordinary people into an unstoppable force united by something deeper than rank, more powerful than authority, and more lasting than any victory. For in the end, the greatest achievement of leadership isn't the battles won or the objectives achieved. It's the creation of a brotherhood that lives on in the hearts of all who were part of it, inspiring future generations to reach for the same heights of human possibility.